Interesting morning. I spent my morning jumping into the frigid water of the San Francisco Bay. It's an annual event I do with the police department to raise money for charity. Hopefully I got the seaweed out of my hair. Last year was an unusual circumstance in which we had a very high-profile Wish family attending the event. And Chelsea and Matt Cain from the San Francisco Giants had issued me a personal challenge. If I could raise $50,000, they would match it with another $50,000. So the news picked it up, which was exciting, and every network was coming with a camera, which was unusual for a charity event. And normally I wear a goofy costume into the water. Last year, the chief and I talked about it. We thought it was appropriate to wear our Bat Kid t-shirts. So I began to think about that scenario. Cold water, wet t-shirt, a lot of cameras. I think you know where I'm going. So I did a little dress rehearsal to make sure I didn't embarrass myself or anyone else. And I am happy to report success. No wardrobe malfunction. Not a bad way to spend a morning and raise $100,000 for my favorite charity. Trouble is, I don't know what I did with my wet clothing. So a day goes by, a couple days, week, 2 weeks. And I forget about it, actually, and I'm having a meeting with the police chief and some of his staff, and one of his key staff members comes up to me just before the meeting, and he leans in rather discreetly, and he says, "We have your clothes. The Hall of Justice." And the look of mortification on my face, because, first of all, how do you know they're mine? We're talking about undergarments. So my first leadership lesson is don't let the police take your panties. Honestly, it's about humor and making fun of yourself and remembering that it is critical in a workplace and creating an environment of excellence. It's really important to have self-deprecating humor. And sometimes when things go awry, great things can come of it. In fact, some of the greatest successes I've had have been a result. And if nothing else, you'll have a story for your TED Talk, right? What is the most valuable asset of your organization? In my opinion, it is talent. It's your team. It is the people who make it all happen, right? One of the things that is critical in assembling a team is making sure that you're picking people who support that environment, who are looking for results-oriented, right? To be happy, to enjoy working with each other. It's creating an environment for excellence, I like to say. And, a lot of folks have addressed and said, well, that Bat Kid thing, that must be the most significant thing of your career. And while it did get billions of impressions and 117 countries talking about it, and tens of thousands of people who came to San Francisco to help fulfill a wish, and it became one of the biggest news stories of the year and now will be the subject of a documentary, it was not the greatest accomplishment of my career. The greatest accomplishment is assembling the team that made that happen, the people that I have the honor and privilege to work with. And when I talk about teams, I want to start at the beginning, hiring. And I think there's not enough attention paid on hiring, and it makes me, frankly, more nervous hiring than firing. And if you've ever made a bad hire, you know what I'm talking about. Because I'm not just looking for talent and experience. I'm looking for someone who's going to be a culture fit, who's going to advance the culture of our mission personally and making sure to do so in a team. Something you should know about me, and by the way, in this past week, there have been some stories about companies who are offering unlimited vacation as a way to retain employees, and I love this idea. I love it because if you're hiring the right people, they're conscientious, they're already results-oriented, they're successful, and they're working all the time, they're connected. So why not give them the sense that you think their work-life balance is important to you as well? And if you treat people like adults, they'll probably act like one. Another thing that I think is significant, if you're looking for a job, remember, I'm only asking one question, and I may pose it dozens of ways. The one question is, why should I hire you? Now, I'm going to tell you a secret about me. I don't enjoy conflict, and I've been known to avoid it. I like to try to sweet talk my way into getting what I want, but there's sometimes you can't avoid it. And if you have an underperformer, if you have someone who is a cultural misfit, and I'm assuming that you've given them every opportunity to succeed, you need to do them and your team a favor and swiftly address it. And I don't mean to sound heartless, but you owe it to the team. It's your moral obligation as a leader. Years ago, I was a volunteer with the San Francisco Unified School District, and I was speaking with a principal at the highest-rated elementary school in San Francisco. And she was being criticized by how she spent her mornings. How did she spend them? Out on the curb, greeting the children as they came off the bus, as their parents dropped them off. And she said, I beg to differ. I can't imagine a better use of my time than to be setting the tone, to stand here and to greet these children and prepare them for a day of excellence in education. And that resonated with me 20 years ago, and I don't stand on the curb and greet the staff. Maybe I'll do that Monday. But I do think about that. How can you set the tone for excellence? Creativity, collaboration. And that's a challenge that I think about today. I heard Nancy Rockefeller speak once and coin a term, smother mother. And it's very appropriate, actually. Let your managers manage. Hire the best managers you can, but let them manage. Do you have lots of standing meetings? Are you managing by rules? I think that makes you an administrator. Leading is lonely. It's supposed to be. You're out front. There's no best practices. You're an entrepreneur, right? No one's done it before, that's the point. It is taking a risk, and you will make mistakes, but if you keep it results-oriented and positive, it will lead you in the right direction. Idea development is so much fun in a team environment, but I'm not sure it's given enough time. Allow the ideas to be vetted by your team. I like to take an idea to the team, and what happens is, it's no longer my idea or your idea, it evolves. It's our idea. And it grows, and then people get ownership and excitement, and they become passionate about it. And before you've even begun implementation, you're already ahead, because you've created a process that even if the results aren't what you want, it will lead to what you want. So when I have an employee come to me and say, I have a problem, I like to say, but do we have an opportunity? What are your ideas for solving this? Seek ideas from every corner of your organization. In digital age, thank goodness for email and text messaging and Skype and all the ways that we can speak to each other for technology. And that's great. But it really is all about relationships. And the strongest relationships with your constituents is going to be built on face-to-face communication. Something I know I've learned, I struggle with, but more and more time that I can be spent face-to-face, the better the relationships. All those little successes should be celebrated. And by the team. Give credit, don't take it. And make sure that you realize that sometimes just survival is success. And lastly, conflict, as I've learned, is not a four-letter word. It is necessary in a workplace. And in fact, it should be encouraged, particularly if you are focused on results. You never know where it will lead you. Some years ago, I earned myself a nickname. We were working on an event, and it was significant by our standards. 1,000 people were coming, $750,000 that we were trying to raise. And I walk into the venue, and I can see across the hall, there's a gentleman, one of our vendors, and he is furious. And he is chewing out one of the events team. And his body language tells everything, and it's offensive to me. And I can hear his tone, and I approach, I can hear the language he's using, and there's just nothing in that scenario is going to help solve whatever the heck is wrong, right? And I'm dressed down because I'm setting up like everybody else, and I approach and I step into his space, all 5 feet, 12 inches of me, which somehow seems more petite than 6 feet. And I step into his space and I say what I usually say to diffuse someone, how can I help you? Well, it didn't work. His anger was so focused, and he directed it right at me. And he said, and who the hell are you? And I responded without hesitation and with enthusiasm and said words I don't think I had ever said before. I am the bitch in charge. And at that moment, everyone within earshot, all the other vendors, turned the other way and ran. Our events team, I endeared themselves to them, and I earned myself a nickname. And the people closest... The people nearest and dearest to me in my life call me their BIC, and I consider it an honor. And so I think the message is sometimes you need to take the heat for your team, and sometimes you need to step in and help resolve the problem and let them know you have their back. And in doing so, you just might earn your own nickname. Here's to finding your inner BIC.